boxing world and you study fighters and fights so much. What is it specifically that stands out for you in this one?
I think it's just the unknown, really, because being fair, the pair of them, we don't know how good they are. We've watched them come up individually, we've compared them all the way through for the last 4 years. 1 minute, one looks as though he'll beat the other, then the other one puts in a good performance, and then you might swap. And I think the fact that majority of neutral fans seem to be chopping and changing every fight. Me personally, for 4 years, I thought one man would win this fight. But as it's come closer, and you see the mental edges and the mind games that are going on with behind the scenes, with the camps, managers, trainers, promoters, it all puts into one pot for me where it's just so intriguing, and it's very, very, very difficult to split.
Darren, have you had a feeling for a long time, or has that changed over the course of the politics that have stopped the fight happening and now bring it on? You changed your opinion at all?
I haven't, if I'm honest, and you might not like it here, but I'm siding with Carl Frampton. I fancy him, I just fancy he's the more complete fighter. I mean, it is a great fight, we're looking forward to it, it's a good win. There's a bit of bad blood involved as well. When it's genuine and it's not manufactured for nothing, and they both don't like each other, and the camps don't seem to like each other much, Ed. So yeah, I mean, it just sets the scene for a fantastic fight and roll on Saturday.
Spencer, your old division, of course, I mentioned some of the great names through the years. Scott Quigg, Carl Frampton, two of the greats of this generation, but it's a defining night for them. You know, we always say that sort of great fighters or great fights need a dance partner. They've got each other. Who's going to have the edge, do you think, when it comes down to it?
Well, they have got each other, Adam, and it has been 4 years in the making. I think that makes this fight even more exciting, and they both ran parallel careers, really. You know, both stayed undefeated, both been moving up in class all the time, and they've both gone on to win world titles, which is a phenomenal feat in its own. And you talked about, you know, various fighters in the weight division. We had Eric Morales and Marco Antonio Barrera, two great guys that boxed from the same place, and had a trilogy of unbelievable fights. And I truly believe that this fight, I know you hear that old cliche, it's a 50-50, but this one really is. And these guys, it's so difficult. You speak to, you know, I done a poll on Twitter just to see the response that you would get, and it was that tight. I think it was 49% for one guy, 51% for another. So the general public don't know. The boxing, you know, the boxing media don't really know either. It's that difficult to split, and I think it will be a close fight. And I think that both guys will have to go through a crisis at some point in the fight, and I think we could see the return, because I think it'll be tight. I think it could even be controversial at the end. But it's going to be exciting. I think both guys deserve to be on this platform today, because they've worked so hard to get here. And yeah, there is a lot of needle between the two, but trust me, at the end of it, they'll be covering each other, because I think they'll both respect each other through the fight and what they go through.
I think they both respect each other now. Johnny, up there today at the press conference, when we asked them what would it mean if they sort of weren't going to go home with their belts at the end of the night, you know, at 12 o'clock on Saturday night, there has to be a loser. I think what got to me was how confident and secure in themselves and in their own skin that both fighters are for winning this. Do you see that? You've followed it for the last few weeks, or do you see any sign of worry or weakness from either side?
Turn up mic, testing, 1, 2, are we on?
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, this might be easier.
Adam, usually you find a big indicator is when we do the gloves are off, you can find out which one is as strong mentally, physically, emotionally, and it's just been so hard to split these two. And my worry is, no, it's not a worry, concern is you've got two fighters that I really, really believe they are going to win. These guys have so much confidence in themselves. Scott Quigg, he has no plan B. He left school early, boxing with his life is his life, and he knows for a fact this is all he wants to do. He's not got the domestic responsibility of most of us. We got kids and everything. He lives at home with his mum. Things are done for him because his life, his family life, is set around his boxing. For Carl Frampton, he has a family to provide for. He has responsibilities, so he takes himself away from the box and switches off now and again. For Scott Quigg, I think it means more to him, and I'm not saying it means less to Carl Frampton. It means more to him because it's his life. This guy, he doesn't have a plan B. He doesn't see it possible for him to lose, and this is one of those occasions where I hope I'm wrong, because I can empathise, I can understand where Scott Quigg comes from, because he's obsessed with boxing, he's obsessed with training, it's his life. I was exactly the same. So even though I put my hand up and said I think Carl Frampton will pull it off, I actually hope I'm true to form and wrong again, because Scott Quigg, I get him, he lives the life, he's a gym rat, and if anybody deserves it, it's him. He has no plan B, and this is his life, and so you've got to respect him for that.
Johnny, I just want to ask a follow-up. I don't want to have to bring up the fact that you lost your first 3 professional fights.
I did.
And you got used to losing, unfortunately, early. These guys haven't tasted defeat. Who will take it harder?
Scott Quigg. I think Scott will take it harder because his education, his life is around his boxing. He left school early, didn't do his exam because all he wanted to do was box. So, say for instance, it's like, for him, it'd be like someone stole a day out of the week. You don't know who to blame, but you know something's missing. This is his life. Carl Frampton has his family, and sometimes he switches off, and you see him in between fights, he blows up a little bit. Every time you see Scott Quigg, this guy looks in great shape, so he lives the life. I think it'll hit him harder than it will Carl Frampton if he loses, and that's why I think it makes Scott Quigg a dangerous champion, because he knows for himself he can't afford to lose. He can't even dream it, he can't even think it.
Anthony, you obviously know Scott well. You're part of the very, very successful Joe Gallagher stable, and you're evidence that something is working big time. Scott has it all in front of him. Is this for him the night of destiny, the moment that he's asked for, and that now he will deliver?
Without a doubt. Johnny's just said about him leaving school, no education, no exam results. Scott, this is his moment of destiny, and this is how Scott sees it. This isn't about Scott's achieved the goal, being a world champion. He's doing well. On Saturday after Saturday, I think Eddie will tell you he's going to be financially settled for life. But this isn't about that for Scott Quigg. Honestly, I think I know Scott almost as well as anyone, and he genuinely would do this for nothing on Saturday night. He genuinely would, and it's all about the win. Right now, but no, you don't know how much this means to him until you're actually around him, and that's obviously my opinion. He won't be denied on Saturday night. But for me, it's great to see 2 lads, like I mentioned before, at the low weights, getting the recognition, selling out an arena in minutes, and putting on an unbelievable fight for British boxing.
Anthony, you say you're closer than most. You're also, despite the fact you've done so well in your boxing career, you work the corners as well. You're very close to the whole training set up with Joe Gallagher. Behind closed doors, when we're away from the sort of fanfare and the public quotes, how much do Team Quigg fear Carl Frampton and the strengths and power that he possesses?
Scott respects Carl Frampton. Scott knows fighting Carl Frampton similar the way to Kiko Martinez. He said to me, I wake up every morning with fear, with the sort of knowing that I've got to push myself, to better myself, to improve, to make sure the best Scott Quigg turns up that night. And he very much had that with Kiko Martinez, and listen, I know Carl Frampton, in my opinion, is going to be a much tougher opposition than Kiko Martinez, but I've saw Scott again, raise it again when I didn't think he could be any more dedicated, train any more harder. That's what he's done in the gym, and I believe that's where he's raised his level again, and I think that's what on Saturday night he'll show that.
Eddie, obviously we know who you want to come through and win this fight, but what I want to know, and I'm sure what the people want to know out there, is how this all came together, and finally, after sort of years of waiting, we get the big match, we get the 50-50 duel, it's on. How tough was that?
You know, the fight's been brewing for 4 years, and I think when I used to represent Carl, we were pushing for the fight so hard, but they were British and European champions at the time, Commonwealth champions, Scott Quigg, Carl Frampton as well. But when you look back, I was so desperate to make the fight at the time, and everyone kept saying, no, wait till they're both world champions. And to be honest with you, I looked at Scott Quigg and I thought, I'm not sure he's going to go on and win a world title. I've got this kid here, Carl Frampton. We're selling out this Odyssey Arena. Look at the crowd, they're going mad for him. Scott Quigg can't get a fight. He's got no promoter. He looks like a lost son. We beat him. But what happened after that is myself and Barry McGuigan had a little conversation, it didn't go down too well, and we parted ways. And then I started talking to Scott Quigg. I actually, the night that Kiko Martinez beat, Carl Frampton beat Kiko Martinez, I ended up in Subway with Scott Quigg. Because that night, there's a very famous interview where I say, Scott Quigg needs Carl Frampton, blah, 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 blah. And I looked up and Scott Quigg was 10 yards away, and he was looking at me with daggers. And I thought, I better go and buy him a Subway. So we went back to the hotel and I bought him a Subway and I sat down with him. And he was a really endearing man. And like Johnny goes back to about his life, I mean, you can't say that Scott Quigg doesn't have a life, because Scott Quigg is so happy in his life with what he does. But really, to the man on the street, Scott Quigg doesn't have a life. And he said something fascinating in the media, at the media lunch, which was, people talk about sacrifices they make. I don't make any sacrifices because I love what I do. You know, the ex-fighters on this table, which is everyone, although Crolla's active, but apart from you and me, Darren Barker, probably the greatest example of someone that couldn't stand the gym and couldn't stand the camps. Sorry, Darren, but true story. But when Scott Quigg says to you, he says, there is nothing more I love than my alarm clock going off in the morning to go my sprints. Any fight.
Me though, when I was boxing, when I was training, I couldn't stand training. The reason being is because I felt sick because I trained that hard, and it just surprises me that someone can enjoy feeling the way I did. It was like training for a hangover. It was that bad. It felt sick. And I mean, I don't know if he's just saying it because I just don't truly believe anyone, if you're training that hard, can enjoy doing it. You can't enjoy feeling like that. But so unless you're not training.
Well, maybe he's just convinced himself that he loves it, but he definitely does love it. And that's the strange thing. And the more I got to know him, and I think Scott Quigg is a different fighter now than he was to when he boxed Salinas. You know, he's come away, he's not an extrovert. He doesn't like public speaking. You know, he's uncomfortable up there at press conferences, and sometimes people say, oh, he looks a bit lost. He just doesn't like to talk. But he's grown as a person and a fighter, even since the Salinas victory, you know, wins against, you know, Silva, lower level opposition, Jamoy, Munyai was a good win, and then the acid test against Kiko Martinez. But the reason I fancy Scott Quigg to win so much is when you're around him, and Crolla will know this more than anyone, you just look at him and I looked at him today, I thought, you're not going to be denied it. I can see it in your eyes. And listen, I know it's a 50-50 fight, anything can happen, but my gut tells me he's not going to take no for an answer. And I think he's going to be very dangerous, and I think he's going to be clinical and brutal in this fight. And listen, for British boxing, it's fantastic. Two great guys, two wonderful fighters, and you know, Anthony was right. The division will never see a payday like this before. And I know fans aren't bothered about paydays, but I am, because it's my job and my obligation to secure these people the paydays that when they walk away from the sport, they can just go out and watch Chelsea and get drunk all the time.